out of that? Or is that not going to be what comes out of that?
So the case definition issue is part of the workshop, all right? So the purpose of the workshop is to evaluate the research evidence surrounding the multiple case definitions and to address the validity, reliability, and ability of the current case definitions to identify individuals with the illness, identify individuals with that are subgroups with the illness, who can be differentiated by a case definition, and or to identify responders from non-responders based on some element of the case definition as informed by the evidence. And this is all used to advance the research. So it's really an analysis or an understanding of the science that supports the case definitions, in the sense that the outcomes are telling us something, or the outcomes are not telling us something. Where are the gaps? Where does the evidence show up, and where is it not?
What outcomes are you looking at then?
Whatever outcomes have been measured within that evidence.
Okay, so we have the primer, we have the Canadian consensus document. There's been a considerable amount of study that's gone into developing those. Where are those going to play into the workshop?
So the evidence that will be collected and reviewed and put into the review by ARC, that evidence will have within each of the studies, they will say, we used FACUDA, we used international case definition, we used this definition. We didn't use a definition, we simply just selected from a random group of individuals and tried to phenotype or tried to identify individuals. So the evidence is based on whatever has been out there and been used. So there will be evidence related to the international case definition, evidence related to FACUDA, evidence related to all of the different case definitions. So having a single case definition is not the goal of this, is not the moving through this workshop process. Is the idea is not to have a case definition moving forward into the workshop and look at the evidence for it. It's to assess the evidence related to all of the case definitions and see where there may be opportunities to modify or to understand better how those case definitions predict.
Yeah, one of the basic differences in the definitions is whether or not they require post-exertional fatigue, and that is debated. I understand that. How is that going to be addressed in this particular workshop?
So the case definitions that involve a post-exertional malaise will be assessed within the evidence.
So, for instance, you look at the Oxford definition, you got 6 months of fatigue, which isn't very discriminating. Then you have the post-exertional fatigue, which may be the most discriminating of what we have now. What are you going to find out that's different than that?
We're going to find out what the difference is. We're also going to find out, based on the clinical trials or based on interventions, which of those may have worked for some and worked for others. So there's the intervention component, because in not every experiment, but in most studies, there'll be an intervention applied or a manipulation, and that will show some individuals responded, some didn't. 100% responded, some didn't. This intervention affected post-exertional malaise, but it did not affect something else.
Okay. Let's go on. Kim?
Susan, the document that you provided in the packets with the fiscal year 2012 funding, that's all extramural, right?
No.
Okay.
Sorry. I didn't mean to snap. No, that is extramural and intramural, because it's all funded research on the topic of ME/CFS.
So it seems like, and maybe it's because of the difference in fiscal years, that there was probably more XMRV-related spending in that time period that isn't evident here for things like the Lipkin study and the blood safety study, the NCI's work and its intramural program, the work at the clinical center with Dr. Alter,
Yes.
and the support in your office for you to participate. So I'm just wondering if we're, how to capture that.
Okay, so if this is what I do, I print out the FY12, the FY11, the FY10, the FY9. So I go to report, just like everyone else can. I go to report and I download the specific spreadsheets, and I look at those, and I can track which applications got funded, so what awards are doing what, whether they're from intramural, extramural, XMRV, infectious diseases, pathologies, neuroimmune. And so on a snapshot like FY12 funding, you simply just see what's here now. But you're right. If you go back and look at FY11, you'll see the Lipkin on there. If you go back and look at FY12, you'll see a $1.5 million award for an intramural grant. If you go back to FY09, you'll see different types of grants and different types of grants and intramural funding that has come and gone, whether the research has continued by that specific investigator institution or whether it's stopped.
We have time for 2 more questions because we need to move on. First is Eileen.
Thank you, Susan. I think one of the things I'm trying to understand, which is similar to the CDC multi-site study, is the case definition issue is critical. And most of the case definitions out there are outdated and not specific, and in some cases erroneous. They don't really describe the illness. So why are you looking at all of those case definitions to get a better one? It's like it's the same problem I keep having with the multi-site. They're, bringing in Fukuda, Oxford, empirical, and you want like the best to rise to the top, but I don't understand how you're going to derive a good definition from looking at a lot of bad ones.
The goal of the workshop is not to derive a new definition. That is not the goal of the evidence-based methodology workshop. It's to understand and identify where the evidence, how the evidence shows up for case definitions, for outcomes, for interventions, and for treatments. That's what it is. So if it turns out that some interventions have more impact or have a more positive outcome for, say, post-exertional malaise, then we're going to know that post-exertional malaise in a case definition is probably going to be a good thing to do. But we're not, the workshop is not advocating any specific case definition. It is simply just a method to review it, to understand where the evidence shows up, where the gaps are, and where we need to move forward.
So you will not be developing a case definition?
If that is not the purpose of the workshop.
But will it inadvertently come out of the workshop, even if it's not the stated mission?
I don't know what the outcome of the workshop will be until the workshop occurs.